Hello everybody and welcome back to Create Aeronautics. We're starting today off at a little bit of a, well, it looks like a horde has appeared. So obviously I've added a few mods and I had to turn the volume down, but yeah, so I added a few mods to the world. The first one adds these zombie hordes that can spawn every night, and something you might also notice is that they can actually jump up on top of each other and start climbing. Which is kind of scary. I think if I come over here, they'll actually be able to get me. They'll begin to jump up here. Oh gosh, yep. So let me quickly take care of these guys, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing in today's episode. So in today's episode, what I want to do is finally get started and finish off, I should say, with the production line of wheat. That includes finally converting our flour that we're producing up there in that windmill behind me and converting that into dough and eventually bread, of course. Then I want to spend a little bit of time expanding the actual fields and everything out here, finally getting our carrot and cabbage fields planted. I also want to get a potato field planted, and that's for a very specific reason. But I think that reason is actually something we'll do in the future, probably next episode. But if you're excited to finally finish off the wheat processing process, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton and lets me know that you guys are interested in these videos. If you want to take it one step further, why not consider becoming a channel member? It's the best way to support me directly, and you get access to all of these videos about a week early. With all of that out of the way, let's make some bread. And it looks like we just ended at the perfect time because the Night of the Undead is finally over. Speaking of which, I did add a few mods as I mentioned in the intro. The first one was the one that added the zombie horde, and that mod is called Undead Nights. I've also added a few more Create add-on mods, such as Create Ultimate Factory, which just adds a few more recipes for some of the more common items. For example, we can finally craft Tough, which is a pretty important building block. And I've also added the Create Gunsmithing mod, which will allow us to craft a variety of Create sort of styled guns. But the recipes on these are a little bit complicated. We're either going to need heavy plates, which is steel ingots, and steel comes from casting molten steel, and we have a few different ways of actually making this. We'll probably use the factory must grow version though. I've also added this gravity gun mod, which actually does work with Create Aeronautics. However, if we look at the recipe, yeah, it's pretty complicated. So unfortunately, we won't be able to use this for a while. And I've also added a few exploration-based mods. So if we ever get some time to go out and explore the world, we should see a few more structures, be able to find some more artifacts and everything. And yeah, I think that'll make flying around in the helicopter, the Dragonfly, just a little bit more cool. Also, just a quick update on the Dragonfly itself. I disassembled it to get a schematic so that I could get the updated sort of version of it uploaded and everything. Unfortunately though, a few parts of it broke. Like, we don't have any propellers anymore. So yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that. This thing is kind of a pain in the butt to glue back together though, so I might be working on another version here pretty soon that's a little bit easier to use. So now that we're done with the mod talk, let's talk about a few things that I've done in between episodes. You might notice that the area between the windmill and the storage silos over here has been filled out just a little bit here. I'm just using vanilla trees right now. I do eventually want to use custom trees. However, that's a pretty big commitment, and it's very time consuming unless I use schematics, which is something I'll probably end up doing. So I'll probably just have to go into creative, make a few variations of trees, and then bring them in with schematics and everything. But we don't even really have a tree farm yet in this world, so I'll probably have to wait until that's done to be able to do custom trees. Also started to block out this bridge And yeah, it is just a very, very simple bridge, but it is going to be a pretty important one because eventually we're going to be having vehicles go across the bridge and start to bring materials towards the village, which, yeah, we haven't really started building a village yet, but I do think that I want to change that today because we're finally going to be building a sort of a bakery. Now, my vision for this area is pretty simple. I think I've talked about it a little bit here and there, but I kind of wanted to go through and sort of detail things out a little bit more. So I think I've mentioned it before, but I want this sort of area over here to be an airport. So this entire area is reserved. Then I want a sort of a road going straight through the middle here. I should probably line these up with the chunks. That might be a pretty good idea. Then way later in the future, when we actually begin working on the city area that's going to be down here, we'll have a bridge that crosses through this forest here. But I want all of our sort of early game like factories and everything to be over here. And then we'll have all of our easy villager stuff set up in this area here, which means that eventually we're going to have to transform this village. There's going to be a refueling station right about here. And by the way, we are going to be switching up fuel types pretty soon. I don't want to spoil too much, but that's what we'll do here as well. So we'll have a couple of different fuel sources. So I think the area that I want to begin sort of filling out right now is this sort of section right here. There's going to be a road leading this way. This actually leads over to the mountain. And this is where I'll set up a few different sort of farms. We'll probably have our cobblestone farm, stone farm, iron farm, everything over in this direction. Oh, right. And I completely forgot to mention, you can kind of see this green box around the windmill over here. And that's actually from the FTB chunks mod, which basically allows us to claim chunks, meaning that they won't be destroyed by creepers, and other players, if you're playing on a multiplayer server, can't actually modify blocks in your area. But more importantly is that you can actually load the chunks, meaning that everything that happens inside of that is going to continue to work. So the windmill is currently active, even though we're all the way over here by the workshop. All right, but I think I've been yapping for long enough. Let's begin by getting this sort of road in place right now so that we can actually build off of it. Let's roll that time lapse. All right, so I've sort of flattened out this area now and added in a few roads, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. So this strip right here is where we're actually going to be building some of our factories. Technically, they'll be right here-ish, along the sort of line here. The area out front is going to be more of a sort of a parking lot and a like kind of a sub road, so that the vehicles don't exactly. So the vehicles don't take up the entire road here, just trying to get in and out. And you might have noticed that I built up this little train here, and this is actually pretty handy. So we're just using the roller. These will place blocks down in a, like basically right below the actual sort of wheel. And these are really, really nice for like sort of flattening out an area and putting down some blocks that you actually need to build. Now, in order to actually get it to randomize the blocks that it's using, we actually have a brand new mod that I just added to the mod pack called Create Randomize Filters. This adds a few different filter types that we can use to build up a sort of a random palette. I just have the, I think that's eroded, trodden, rough and sanded dirt. I'm surprised I remembered all the names for that. Then you just place it inside of the filter slot here, and yeah, it'll do its thing, and it will pull the items from this item vault on the back. In order to add items to it, we just have a barrel up here that we fill with the various types of building blocks. And definitely adding this Undead Knights mod has definitely added a little bit of intensity to the gameplay here, especially with these elite zombies, because they do a lot of damage and they have a ton of health, so it can be a little bit annoying at times, but I kind of like it. It adds a little bit of a distraction from just always just placing blocks down. But I think now is a pretty good time to finally get started on the bread factory. I'm thinking I want it in this sort of corner section here. It'll go out probably to about this line here, and will probably be pretty wide. We want it to be pretty big, although it's really only going to have a couple of machines inside of it, so technically it doesn't need to be big. It doesn't really need to be its own building or anything, but yeah, just for the sake of like story and world building and everything, I definitely want to make some pretty big buildings overall. And I think for the actual design of this building, I want to go with bricks, but as you can see, I currently only have 16 to my name. And we do have a decent amount of clay balls, and we can actually get these pretty easily by just bulk washing sand, and that will actually give us a 25% chance of getting clay. And I'm kind of sick of doing everything manually, so I just want to make sure that I have a automatic brick factory, just because we're going to be doing this a lot. We're going to need a ton of bricks for our projects here. Something I also forgot to mention earlier as well is that I've actually added a custom recipe for the moss blocks. If we take a look, we can actually see that in a mixer, we can combine stone and a bucket of water, and that will just mix into a moss block. I think it's fairly balanced, and it's a pretty decent way of getting moss without having to do like a whole farm for it. So I think it's a pretty decent compromise, needing a full stone inside of a basin, and this goes pretty slowly. This is currently at max speed, I believe, and that's one block every time it goes down, so it is pretty slow. For this brick factory, we are going to need a couple of pairs of crushing wheels, and I definitely think that this is going to be a little bit more of an industrial area, as well as a kind of a smaller factory. It's kind of related to stone stuff, so I kind of want to keep it close to the actual like stone and iron generators that we're going to have over in this direction in the future. So I think I just want to put this down here at the end. We'll have the sort of almost like a garage door right here. So I'm thinking maybe back here is where we can build this. We are going to have to move some of these houses, but for the most part, these are all going to be moved down that way, and they're going to be a little more dense anyway, so this entire village has probably got to go pretty soon. We'll make a mechanical generator from the Create Cobblestone mod, and we'll set this up so that the chute is pointing directly onto this belt. We'll put a drawer right here, chute on top of that, and then the mechanical generator on top. Then we can set the filter inside of that to be cobblestone, and as soon as we give that rotational power, that will begin to generate cobblestone. Then, and we're just going to place down some temporary blocks, then we want it to go into a pair of crushing wheels, and I think I want a temporary storage here, so that'll be gravel. Then the second pair of crushing wheels will go right here. These will turn the gravel into sand. Then we're going to have another drawer here. These are just temporary so that we can kind of plan everything out here. So that'll funnel in and then out. We can expand the belt. Then somewhere underneath, we're going to need an encased fan. This could really be anywhere. Then we'll put a leaf on top, and we will waterlog the leaf. That will prevent the water from flowing out. Then we'll have a funnel here that will be filtered to deny anything that can be washed. And I think it will actually need to be right here. So if we take a look here, we do only get one ingredient from this first one, so we should only need one drawer. That's good. However, when we crush the gravel, we're going to get sand, a 10% chance of getting flint, and a 5% chance of getting clay balls. So we're just going to have to keep that in mind. And then when we wash the sand, yep, only a 25% of getting clay balls, nothing else from that though. So let me go ahead and work this out and then get it hooked up to power, and we should have a working brick factory. All right, and the brick factory in terms of the components is all done. So now the only thing left to do is to wait for some bricks to actually sort of generate. Also, I was going to do this in a time lapse, but I forgot to hit the record button, so unfortunately we won't be able to see what everything I did, but I can actually go through and walk through this really quick. I've already kind of talked about this first sort of line here. We're generating cobblestone that gets put onto the belt, gets crushed into gravel. The gravel gets pulled out into the second set of crushing wheels. That gets turned into sand, flint, and clay. Then we're just pulling out the clay and the sand from this chest here, and I have a filter in here. This filter is set to just pulling the sand and clay out. Then it gets sent over here, and this is where we have a fan set up. This will actually wash the sand. If the clay goes through here, it will just automatically pass through it because this is set up for the attribute can be washed, and currently clay cannot be washed. So that gets put into this drawer here. This one is only storing clay. So the clay then gets pulled out into this section here. And we have another fan, and let's see if I can actually see this. Maybe break that. It'll be like right here. Yeah, we have lava here that's being sprayed upwards, and the lava will actually cook the clay balls into bricks. Then the bricks get pulled out from this chest and put into a basin with a mechanical press on top. And this basin is set to be filtered to only being able to produce bricks. And once it has 4 bricks inside of it, it will begin to press it down, and then it will be automatically pulled out. If you have a belt next to a basin, by the way, it'll have this little spout, and that basically just acts the same as a funnel. But the cool thing is that you can actually put it all on one block, which is a little bit more compact. Then it gets put into this spruce drawer, and this is where the final product actually is. So like I said, I do want to use bricks for the bread factory, but I also want to use the bricks for this build as well. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wait just a little bit. Wait for some bricks to actually generate. It's gonna take a little while. Bricks are usually one of the more annoying blocks to gather. Also, in terms of the power situation for this, I just have a rotation speed controller with a ton of water wheels here. Yeah, this is all pretty necessary, and I can only go at 42 RPM right now, which is definitely a limiting factor. One of my goals with this world is actually to build up a power plant. We're probably gonna have a few different sort of iterations throughout this world that all use like different fuels, eventually maybe even getting up into making a nuclear reactor. But I do think the first one that I want to build is actually going to go right here. I think I've finally settled on this area being a power plant. All right, so I went ahead and chunk loaded this area, and while I wait for some bricks to accumulate, I want to return to the farmlands area over here and plant a couple of new fields. These are going to be smaller fields than the wheat field. I think that they're going to be a little more aesthetic than actually functional, although we will be adding sort of a functional element to them. But there's 3 things that I want to plant right now. I want to plant some carrots, potatoes, and cabbage. The carrots and cabbage are used in the sandwiches that I want to make, but the potatoes are used for something that we'll get to in the future. I don't know how many times that I've actually talked about this so far, but yes, potatoes are going to be pretty important coming up pretty soon. Right, so we have 3 brand new fields planted here. We have the potatoes right next to the wheat, cabbage next to that, and carrots over on the side. And I decided to go with just planting rows for this. It's mostly for aesthetic purposes. But yeah, it does look pretty good. Once these sort of fill out a little bit more, it will actually look better. I also noticed that during the time lapse, I planted some of these cabbages wrong. So I just quickly went back through that and yeah, replanted it so the rows look a little bit better. I've also noticed that my driver for this truck keeps on dying. Now I've been using pigs for this. I'm gonna try a cow. Maybe there's something weird with the pigs. Let's see here. I think I need to put it down and lead it in. Here we go. And then right click it and that should, oh, I thought that was gonna resume. Here we go. He keeps dying around in this area, so I'm not entirely sure what's happening, but I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Now, I haven't checked on the brick factory yet, so I am curious to see how many bricks we've gotten. Hopefully it has been chunk loaded here. And, oh, 3,000. Wow, that's pretty good. Let's hear. We do have a diamond upgrade in this one, so that's pretty good. So that won't fill up for quite a while. It looks like we're doing pretty good over here as well. Nothing's really backing up, and we do have a void upgrade inside of that one. And also, by the way, these hordes are starting to get pretty annoying, so we should definitely look into getting one of those guns sort of figured out here. I'm pretty sure that these require steel, so we're definitely going to have to get into that pretty soon. The gunsmithing recipe requires superheating, which requires blaze cakes. We don't technically need to automate these. We could just have it do it once. We're just going to need cinder flour, sugar, eggs. Cinder flour is just netherrack inside a crushing wheel. You know what? I think we can give this a go. So we do need charcoal dust here. So I'll get some of this netherrack as well as the charcoal going through our crushing wheels. So inside of a mechanical press with a basin beneath it, we can throw in our cinder flour, eggs, and sugar. Oh, it's making the wrong thing. It's making cinder flour blocks. Interesting. I'm just going to quickly make a list filter and add the blaze cake base to that. We can just drag it from JEI, and that should prevent us from wasting all of our ingredients. Then we just add the filter to the basin, and that should work now. There we go. And now with the blaze cake bases, we can just put it beneath a spout with lava, and that will begin to make some blaze cakes. It's going to be pretty slow though, because our system is actually really slow here. There was an update kind of recently, and I noticed that the fluids are actually going through the pipes a lot slower now, and the spouts are just a little bit slower as well, so it's definitely going to be a little bit of a limiting factor, but there we go. We have 12 blaze cakes. So now we can throw our charcoal dust and our iron ingots inside of the basin, give that a blaze cake, and that will begin to make our first steel ingots. And here we go, nice. So I think the gun that I'm going to make first is going to be the revolver, and that's just going to require 2 steel sheets, which I believe we should be able to, yeah, just press these down like so. Oh, interesting. These actually require to be stamped a few times. Interesting. Now we need a couple of stripped logs and a few other various bits from Create, like a cogwheel and an andesite alloy and some brass sheets. And now we can go ahead and get all of our things in place here. So we want one down there and one here. These are our stripped logs. We want a cogwheel there, I do believe. 2 brass sheets there. Our heavy plates right there. Then we need a steel ingot right there. And I think, yeah, just the andesite alloy left. And somebody did mention that you can just give the mechanical crafters a redstone signal. I kind of forgot about this feature, honestly, but yeah, there we go. Here is our first gun. We have a revolver. Nice. Now, obviously, we're going to need some ammo for this. And to make the ammo, we're going to need a revolver shell press form, which you get from a stonecutter. We're also going to need some gunpowder, which I definitely am going to need a farm for pretty soon, as well as a ton of brass sheets. Then I think the way that this goes is we put the revolver shell press form inside of a deployer, put our brass sheets down below, and that will begin to create the revolver shells. Then we just need to deploy gunpowder on those. And unfortunately, it looks like we're probably going to need to assembly line these, but for right now, we'll just do that. Okay, that's actually working. Nice. So those will actually create blank revolver rounds. Then we're going to actually require some lead, which I have not used at all this series so far. And surprisingly, these actually can't be washed. They have to be smelted. So I think what I'm going to do is just put these right here, because this is currently our only smelting factory. I definitely need to make an actual one in the world here pretty soon. I do have fire tick on in this world though, so I definitely need to be careful on where I build these things. Nice, so now that we have our lead, we can convert some of it into lead nuggets. And back at the deployer, we just want to put our casings back down and then put our nuggets inside. Nice. So now with the revolver out, we can go ahead and click R, which is going to reload our shaders, but it's also going to reload the gun. Oh, perfect. Here's some creepers to test this out on. So if you hold down right click, you can aim, and then left click will fire. It does have a little bit of a delay, I've noticed. You have to kind of hold down the mouse button just for a few seconds. All right, I'm definitely going to have to change that key binding. And speaking of shaders, if you're using shaders with this gunsmithing mod as well, the arms will kind of bug out a little bit in first person. You have to go into the configuration and basically turn off the animations. Also, if we press Z while we have the gun in our hand, we can actually see a few of the attachments. We can add a barrel, stock, some have different sorts of magazines and everything, and some have frames. So now, back at our mechanical crafters, I want to craft the auto fire attachment. So we need 2 shafts, 2 brass sheets, a precision mechanism, an andesite alloy, and a cogwheel. If we give that some power, here is our auto fire attachment. So we press Z, and I think this goes here on the frame. Nice. So now when we press B, it'll actually, well, I guess it'll open up my backpack, but it should, here we go. It'll switch to our auto fire mode. So let's see here. Yeah, when it has an A in the bottom right, that means it's on auto fire, which makes the revolver so much better than it was before. It still has a decent amount of kick though, so you kind of got to compensate for that. So now that it's going to be a little bit easier to defend myself, I think it's finally time to build up this brick factory. Alright, so I've just finished up the brick factory. However, I am also just finishing up a horde that just spawned. Actually, there was about 3 of them last night, so I've been dealing with that. About every 10 in-game days or so, there's a Night of the Undead, which just spawns a ton of different hordes throughout the night. So, yeah, I've definitely used a ton of ammo. We're probably going to need some sort of brass factory here pretty soon. Maybe even an ammo factory would be pretty nice. I also learned that you can put the guns in your offhand and shoot using right click. And if you have a sword, you can actually basically dual wield with them, which is pretty cool. I'm currently reloading though. Here we go. So yeah, you just right click and you keep shooting. All right, so here is the brick factory, and I think it turned out pretty good, actually. I went pretty detailed on the outside, though I still need to detail the inside. We'll probably just have like bricks laying here, maybe some crates here and there as well, something like that. Maybe a little bit more detailed, though. This big area out here is probably going to be, in the future, we'll have a truck that just kind of backs in, grabs the bricks, and then backs back out, similar to how we have plans for the windmill. Alright, so I think I've basically figured out the entirety of the flour factory. I've also brought over this storage drawer from the mill, just so that we could kind of take a look and see how this entire thing is going to work. So I'll just go ahead and move this drawer out of here just temporarily and move this one in its place. Right there, here we go. So we'll see that the items immediately get pulled out of here. I have these funnels actually set to pull out exactly 64. So this is only ever going to do 64 at a time. That way it's just a little bit easier and we're not doing just like a single one at a time. It just makes the math a little bit easier to kind of deal with. So it'll leave from this crate and immediately start getting washed. We have 3 fans here, so it should go pretty quickly. Then after that, there's another, just a kind of a temporary storage drawer here, just in case everything gets kind of backed up. We don't want a ton of items out on the belts, although they will still pretty much fill up. So from here though, it goes on this belt and it gets into a brass tunnel, and this is actually set to forced round robin. That means it'll always send one stack that way, then one stack that way, then one stack that way. And it will actually evenly distribute the items. So this first one is actually just for the raw dough. We need raw dough to make slime balls and a few other things, so definitely having a little stockpile of these is going to be pretty nice. Also, I've noticed with the Farmer's Pizzeria, this dough, whenever you try to right click it into a drawer, it kind of glitches out a little bit and places the dough. I'm not entirely sure how to resolve that, and then it also makes the wheat dough instead of the dough from crate. I'm not entirely sure, but we just need to be careful when placing them inside of the storage drawers. So the other route is to go this way. This is where the other half of the dough will end up. It'll travel along this belt and end up over here and actually get, technically I think this is called smoking, or bulk smoking specifically. You could also use regular fires here, but we do have fire spread on in this world, so we're actually just using the campfires instead. That works just as well. Then of course it smokes it down into bread. I don't know exactly how that works, but yeah, it'll cook it into the bread, and this is where the bread will be delivered to other places. So this portable storage interface and this one as well are actually outputs, whereas this one is just for inputting items. And we are currently just working with water wheel power for this. It doesn't require a lot, but these definitely add a little bit of lag. So once we get our power plant up and running, we'll replace this system with just some cables and stuff. It'll be a lot easier and definitely a lot less laggy. Honestly though, this entire factory was a lot more simple than I thought it was going to be. So I definitely kind of planned out a lot of space for this, but it doesn't really need a ton of space. So now I need to sort of plan out how exactly I want the factory building to exactly look. And I've been sort of looking into some of the other types of bricks that we have in this pack, and I think I've settled on the Dean bricks. And these are just made with bricks and ochre. And so I've actually changed up how the brick factory is producing items. I just went ahead and swapped out this brass funnel. Basically, I just moved it onto the wall, and now it's just stopping at the bricks rather than going all the way through and making brick blocks. So hopefully this is going to be good enough for the brick. But if we take a look at how much ochre I only have 148. which is definitely not enough to make this. I'm also out of lead for bullets, which means that I'm gonna have to go for a pretty decently long mining trip. I also need a few other materials as well, so I'm gonna be on the lookout for a few of those as well. Also, I don't think I mentioned this yet. I did add a few more upgrades to the revolver. I added the chamber belt, which I thought actually was on this sort of upgrade slot, but it's actually its own one here. And this is pretty cool. It actually, you can kind of see it go around in a... Yeah, you can see it. It's a belt, basically. It just feeds the bullets into the revolver on a belt, which is really, really cool. And I also added the long barrel, which just gives us a little bit more damage. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna head off to the mines, and I might do like a little montage. If not, I will see you guys in the time lapse when we're actually building the building. Alright, and we have not too bad of a haul overall. Some of these items were obviously already inside of my backpack here, but we got a total of about 1,000 ochre, which 1 ochre makes 4 Dean bricks, which means that we have about 4,000 Dean bricks that we can use for this build, which I think is going to be more than enough. So I'm going to go ahead and get these bricks crafted up, and then we can go ahead and get started on designing the bread factory. Okay, so I've made significant progress on the bread factory, and I think it's turning out pretty good, actually. I went with a, of course I've already talked about this, but with Dean bricks, and I think it turned out pretty good. And I just went with limestone for a sort of border block for it. I'm just using, I think it's gray glass, specifically tiled gray stained glass from Chipped. I might do something more fancy in the future, but I'm not entirely sure. The roof is probably one of my favorites so far. I still need to add a few decorations up here, but these arches actually turned out pretty cool, as well as the smokestacks. And I definitely think my favorite feature of this build, and we'll actually be continuing this on throughout this entire sort of area right here, is the actual fence itself. So it is pretty simple overall. I'm just using the Dean bricks, of course, with the crossed iron bars. Then I actually went through with copycat layers and regular oak leaves, and just added as much detailing and sort of overgrowth as I possibly could. I wanted it to feel almost a little bit overgrown, maybe not quite to the abandoned point, but definitely like unmaintained, at least on the outside. And then we're just using these yellow copper cage lamps for lighting in this area. They're fairly cheap and they look pretty nice as well, so yeah, they're definitely the best option for right now. And of course, the fence wraps all the way around to the backside. Now, I will get to the backside in the future, but I do actually have a sort of plan for the area behind here that may or may not be involving actual train. So for right now, I'm just going to leave this area blank because I'm not entirely sure what I want to do with it. And one last little bit of detailing, well, definitely not last, but another point of detailing that I want to do is I actually want to add some graffiti onto this building. And specifically, this is going to be a billboard. And here we go. It is pretty big. Let's turn this down to 16. And I believe I said it was going to be 16 blocks wide and 4 blocks tall. Yeah, I think that's the size that I chose. We'll go for... I kind of like it with less colors, actually. It looks a little bit more worn down. I think 7 colors looks pretty good. And maybe no dithering on this one. And we can hit save. And here we go. Nice. Oh, that is huge. That's way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Sadly, we can't really see it through the fence right here. I might have to actually raise it up. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it's looking pretty cool. So yeah, this is the Spectacular Bread Factory. And Spectacular Bread is a Sandoco subsidiary, which basically just means that they're owned by Sandoco. And we'll definitely get to talking about Sandoco later on, but just know that it's probably going to be like the biggest company. Definitely one of those organizations that owns a lot of other companies, and definitely a lot of companies that you wouldn't expect them to own. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for the Sandoco sort of logo there. I want to try to add another one of these graffitis over on this side as well, but I might have to make it smaller, and I don't know if it'll actually fit with how this works. That doesn't look too bad, actually. I might move it over a block to the left. Not entirely sure. It is the same size as the other one. We would probably want a smaller one on this side, although it does look really cool. Oh yeah, that looks so cool right there. Nice. Definitely just imagine a whole line of factories and buildings here with like similar logos and everything on it. Oh man, this area is going to come together so well. And speaking of signs, we also have one now over here on the brick factory. This is Staxo Bricks, very clever name, I guess, and a very simple logo to match the simple name. And you can actually see these from pretty far away. I'm actually kind of surprised. You can see that one over there, the one over here. Nice. And I'm sure if I had my render distance up a little bit higher as well, you could probably see it. But yeah, you can just barely see that one from here, but honestly, there's probably going to be a ton of things in the way anyway, so we won't really be seeing it too much. Alright, but I think enough dillying and dallying. What I want to do now is to basically copy the truck design here and make it into almost more of a sort of a boxcar truck that will be used to transport the ground wheat, or the flour I should say, from the mill to our brand new factory. Okay, so I've finally finished up the box truck. I think it turned out pretty good, although I'm seeing now that there's some mistakes with the tires. I think whenever it gets turned into a train, the tires actually get moved back up. Hold on, let me kill this guy real quick. As I was saying, once you actually assemble the train, the tires actually get sort of moved upwards just a tiny bit. And it looks like it kind of interferes with this a little bit because it wasn't sticking up when I actually built it, but it is now sticking up. So I'm probably going to have to work on the bumper, the fender, I should say, on this a little bit more, but I think it's pretty good for now. Initially, I was just going to use limestone for the actual sort of storage container on the back. I forgot we actually have loco metal from Create Steam and Rails, which definitely looks a lot better for this kind of circumstance. We can even get this sort of corrugated pattern on the back with this. This is kind of supposed to represent like a door that would move up and down. And over on the front, I did go for a little bit more of a boxy design. I was just going to copy the one that we already have, but I think overall I wanted this to be just a little bit smaller because it is going to have to be moving into these smaller spaces here. So just having a little bit of a smaller form factor was just kind of necessary for it. So we can go inside and move it around. It's not on the rails that are on the ground right now. I'm just using those to sort of dig out a path beneath it. But we can go ahead and pull in here. It's really close on the left side there. I might need to move it over by 1 block if I'm able to. Let's see here. So there's 3 different spots that we can go for this. So the plan for the automation for this is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to have it come in through here, immediately take a right if it's able to. I'm realizing maybe this part isn't quite connected up right. Let's see if we can do it. Here we go. So we pull in over here, then we can go ahead and back it up. Pull it back in through the garage door. And then turn to whichever one that it needs to go to. So this would be just the raw dough. We aren't going to be using this one or the second one for quite a while. Once we have sort of more of a central storage system, we might automate that. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to go about automating sort of the end process of some of these things. But then we can go ahead and pull right back out. And actually, we don't even need it to turn around again, of course. We can just head right back. And sometimes it is a little bit awkward, but when this thing is automated, it's going to be a lot easier. Here we go. And I am American, so we're going to be driving on the right side of the road. And that's about as far as we can go at the current moment. I do have some paths dug down below here. We might have to do something with these in the future, maybe turn it into some sort of a sewage system or something. But for right now, it goes about up to the bridge. And then it kind of ends there because we need to figure out exactly how we're going to handle the bridge. And I think I'm going to do that using phantom rails, but I'm not entirely sure yet. And one last thing to note on this truck as well is that I actually have the portable storage interface on this block right here, which means that we're going to have to raise these all up by 1, but that's really not too big of a deal. And we can even bring them out further if we need to as well. So that was just a quick little update on kind of what I've been doing for the last day or so. What I'm going to do now though is to go ahead and connect up all of the rails. I'm going to have to make some phantom tracks for the bridge and get all of that sorted out. Get it hooked up all the way down that road and over to the mill. And yeah, then we should be done with this sort of process. Okay, I think I have this entire route sort of figured out now. I had to do a few rerouting things with the rails under the mill over there, but so far it has been running pretty smoothly. Currently it's on a pretty quick schedule. It's only stopping at each of its major stops for about a minute. It is also a Night of the Undead tonight, so I'm gonna have to do this pretty quickly. But yeah, you can see I also had to add a few more different train signals on this line as well, because we do have the other truck, which I actually got back up and running as well. For some reason, the driver just kept on dying, so what I did was I made these sort of, I think they're called conductors. Yeah, conductor. You just put an andesite casing down on the ground and you craft a red conductor's hat or any colored conductor's hat. These just require a piece of red wool, precision mechanism, and a string. Then you can make a entity that will be able to drive the carriages. Let's see where that should go now. Here we go. Nice. Sadly, only one car can be up here at a time, otherwise it gets a little bit messy. So yeah, it's using basically the same back route that it was using before. So once it's done picking up the flour from here, it'll go back onto this section here, back out that way, and then head back on its way to the factory. Now, under the bridge does need a little bit of work. I just went through with regular rails. I keep forgetting to not sleep through the night, so phantoms haven't really been spawning. So I'll have to just remember to do that either in between episodes or in the next one. And of course it will end up backing up here, filling up the chest, and we've already talked about this entire system. So yeah, this is now a complete loop. But I think I'm going to leave things there for today. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my newest channel members, The Gear, Hammy Stark 7708, Decker 2 Tough 326, and of course to our 2 Team Star members, Kenshi Fogworst and Plonk Gooby. Thank you so much for the support. And if you also want to support me directly, as well as get access to all of these videos early, why not consider becoming a channel member? But that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Peace.